Sweet. I'm talking about Neo4j. It's a graph database. What's a graph database? It's a thing that's made up of nodes. Sometimes they're called vertices, sometimes they're called points, and relationships, also called edges. So that in practice looks like this. It kind of reflects the way these objects are related in the real world. So we have that's a node, that thing there. And that's a relationship. Yeah. And that's basically a graph database. Thank you. It maps really well to a lot of real-world scenarios. Like social networks is a common example of where to use a graph database. Also hierarchies, recommendation engines, stuff like that. Huh? You could use it for that, for example. Yeah. So in something like a relational database, you have a conceptual data model and you have a physical data model, and you have to kind of map between them. This is not the case in a graph database. The conceptual data model, it actually is the database. Of course, relational databases are still great for a lot of other stuff. If you have tabular data, then you shouldn't be using a graph database. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the other thing. Relationships are a first-class concept. So instead of having a foreign key on a table, linking two IDs together to link two tables together to collect your data, you have this first-class concept of relationships that link two things together. Yeah. So Neo4j is an example of a graph database. It's written in Java and Scala. You never need to deal with the Java unless you want to. In practice, it works like a black box server. You switch it on and it works. Unless you're using a language on the JVM, then you can integrate with it directly. You can, yeah. But you need to deal with the JVM, and that's been a bit of an issue for us. So, yeah. It's open source. Huh? Hello? Hello? I think it's the state has gone crazy. Okay, it's kind of forgotten what's going on here. Hello? 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 Maybe if I... Huh? Oh, there we go. Hey, yeah, anyway, it's open source. It is open source, like everything is open source, but has some features which are restricted to the enterprise license. Those features are open source, but you're not supposed to use them. It's licensed under GPL and AGPL. Yeah, it's the only major graph database that's open source. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, the enterprise version is AGPL.
Ja, men hvis du ikke linker inn I prosjektet ditt, så det vel ok for det å bruke det, ikke
no.
AGPL sier jo bare at hvis du gjør noen endringer I den koden, selv om du hoster som server, så skal det tilbake igjen, ikke sant?
That's the open source license for the enterprise version. So yes, but you're not at the same time you're not allowed to use the enterprise version unless you have their enterprise license.
Så jag licensiert som MySQL. MySQL har en open source som de vill göra pengar av när de brukar det.
Jo, men det jo ikke det du vunnet frem med det. Det jo egentlig brudd på GPL.
Ja.
GPL 3 brudd på GPL 2 ikke annet.
Kanskje vi kan ha det som hjemmelekse?
Ja, hjemmelekse.
I don't know that much about open source licenses, so whatever. It has a comprehensive REST API. The REST API is the only way I've ever spoken to Neo4j. That and it has like a console, so it does everything that you would need. It is completely fine as the only way that you speak to the database. It has a really good web-based hello.
Yeah.
I'll just refresh it every now and then. Maybe that would have been a good idea. A web man. It has a really good web-based console and data explorer, which is the other way of talking to it. I'm going to show that later on. It's basically like a search engine for your database. It's great. It's the hello. Oh, there we go. Fuck's sake. Oh yeah, there we go. It's the most widely used graph database by a long way. There are no other graph databases that even come close to how much people use Neo4j. Twitter wrote its own graph database. Facebook wrote its own, but for obvious reasons, you wouldn't really. Like, they only really used majorly inside Facebook and Twitter. They're not really used outside, and yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's some really important stuff which is hidden behind that enterprise license, and it's really annoying. You can't hop back up, which you can't back up at all, really, without turning the database off if you don't have the enterprise license. And the enterprise license is stupidly expensive. It's like if you go design furniture shopping, you always know that the most expensive stuff is the stuff that doesn't have a price tag on it. And cool. Exactly. And Neo4j says that. It says, if you want the enterprise license, get in contact with us. It's like, I think before they put that on their webpage, it was either $10,000 a year or $10,000 a month dollars. It was just prohibitively expensive. And they say they give licenses to startups, but again, you have to get in contact with them and tell them how big your business is and tell them what you're using it for, and that gives you one database. If you have a use case like ours where you have lots of databases, forget it. So there's ways to get around hot backupping. It's a database. You read data out of it and you put data into it. So why not just read all the data out and read all the data back into it? Huh? Not that I know of, and then you'd lose a lot of the support that...
Yeah, men du kan ju bara patcha liksom.
Yeah. It's possible. I haven't seen it. No. I've written my own thing to do it. No, I haven't. I mean, you need backups, so having a shitty solution to the problem is better than having no solution to the problem. Yeah, clustering is behind the enterprise license. That's not a problem for us, but it might be a problem for other people. That's a negative for me, but I understand that a lot of other people are more okay with it than I am. The JVM, I mean. It doesn't have database segmentation, which means that you can't share a database between different data domains. The database is one data domain, really. So if you have multiple clients that need segmentation between their data, then you need different databases. So Neo4j expands the concept of a graph database in certain ways. For example, hello?
The network connectivity is it says we're connected down in the corner.
Maybe we should give you a TV or cable.
Which one? I just wonder what network I'm connected to.
It just your icon on the lower left says reconnect.
I can't get brick here, but I'm not on theirs. That's weird.
Yeah, you're on ours.
Yeah. So I wonder why it's... Maybe it's Safari. Safari's pretty shitty. Anyway, yeah, so Neo4j adds some concepts to that basic concept of a graph database. For example, nodes can be given one or more types. These are called labels. This makes a lot of sense in practice. Here's an example of a node, and it's been given the type of beer, an IPA. Back in earlier versions of Neo4j, this didn't exist at all, but once they introduced it, it was like, how were we ever living without this? Basically, everyone was putting a type property on their nodes that said what it was. It's kind of similar to tables in SQL, I guess, but in SQL, but relational databases. But you can have more than one on a node. It has stuff you would expect in a database, indexing and constraints. It supports, as you would expect, it supports graph algorithms by default. So the most obvious ones are shortest path and weighted shortest path. And has its own query language, which is called Cypher, for getting data into and out of the database. They've been working on it for like about 5 years now, I think, and it's come a very long way. It's almost surpassing Neo4j now. They're getting other people to use it in other graph databases, and it is extremely good. A few years ago, I wouldn't have done this talk because I was kind of on the fence about Neo4j. But now with Cypher where it is now, it is extremely nice to use, and that is, in my opinion, entirely because of Cypher. It's transformed how easy it is to use this. Yeah, you don't. That's obvious. That's how you set up everything, but it's easy.
Det sånn at hvis du kan Cypher,
Ja.
og jeg forstår det sånn at Cypher er stort sett modellen du kommuniserer med databasen på,
Ja.
det sånn at så lenge du har Cypher, så kan du plugge ut Neo4j med en annen database som heter Cypher, og så uten alt for mye.
I think they want it to be that way in the future. It's not in practice yet. They've only just begun with trying to grow Cypher beyond Neo4j. They Neo4j invented Cypher themselves, and now in the last few months, they've started the effort of trying to get other graph databases to start using Cypher. So,
Men det kan jo være litt dumt for deg, sånn, hvis de med en gang har lagt et abstraksjonsnivå fra sin database, så plutselig så blir jo din database pluggbar.
yeah, that's true. But I think that on the other side of things, they're not that worried because there's just no competitor.
Yeah.
Like I said before, there is just no graph database that is anywhere near the maturity and accepted, I don't know, words. It doesn't work well with Upstart, but nothing that's Java and demonized works well with Upstart, and no one uses Upstart anymore.
Upstart?
It's Ubuntu's
They put the third system there. So they should have won.
I think they made it after Systemd, didn't they? And then they went back to Systemd because Upstart was shit.
Det var något inventet här, och så fanns det att de fant att köra lite vad som var
Jeg tror det begynte kanskje samtidig som Systemd.
Right.
De brukte det fast at Systemd.
The point is, it expects stuff to be demonized in exactly one way, and if stuff is not demonized in exactly that way, then it doesn't work. It will start the process, but it will immediately say that the process has stopped because it can't track. It supports up to 2 forks, and if you have more than that, then it it doesn't know what's going on. All right. So this is what it kind of looks like in practice with Node in the S6. This is what basically any database looks like in practice. But the important parts are just the db save here, saving 2 node thingies with these types, and then relating them together using those variables there. And then this returns an object as well. The relationship is another object. There can be, but that's not in a transaction. That's actually this is doing it. This will run this one, then wait for it to finish, and this one wait for it to finish, and this one, yeah. But you can do it in a transaction. Cypher. It's sort of like SQL. except it's made for graph databases, and it doesn't have some of the insane parts of SQL, like all of it. No, actually, that's the worst part. Selecting what? Whose idea was it to put select at the start of a query and not the end? That's retarded. Sorry. Anyway. Yes, Neo4j is the only Neo4j's implementation of Cypher is the only one. But as we talked about, they've started to change that by getting other people to implement it. It's made to be reasonably familiar if you know SQL and you've written some kind of code before. So here's that example of creating Jon that works at Brick with a relationship. There's a node, there's a directed relationship with a property on it, and there's another node. And this will create that node, that relationship. It does exactly the same thing that the JavaScript did. And that's a pretty simple Cypher query. So it's declarative. Before Cypher, all of the ways that people would query graph databases were really shitty. They used things like JSON to describe a query, and then you embedded snippets of JavaScript code into the JSON. I think that was called Gremlin, and it was ugly as hell, and it just kind of looked like a bit of a hack. And yeah, it's as a language, it's pretty simple. So I'm going to try and get that data out that was in one of the first slides, where it had the brewery Lervig and the beer Lervig Rye IPA and Bergen Beer Station on Vinmonopolet. I'm going to do that from a pretend SQL database, and it looks like that. So there's a select, woohoo, it's at the start. We return as the first statement, because that's completely sane. And then we have 4 lines of noise, which doesn't actually mean anything. And then we restrict our data set with some where clauses. So those 3 lines, you're just joining tables together, and why do we have to write that? So in in Cypher, that looks like this. You just write exactly the data that you want out. There's a predicate of the relationship and between the data, and then you just return that. So instead of a select, we have a return at the end. That's, yeah. So the first thing that most read queries usually get is a match. Usually have is a match. It specifies part of where to start in the graph, and it looks like this. So this thing here is an identifier. That's what we'll use to refer to this node or set of nodes that we're matching now.
So it's a colon and delimiter här, sant?
It's a prefix to a label in this case.
Okay.
It's
Så det är doppligt syn på en objekt.
Huh?
Det är någon, alltså...
When you're doing...
Skulle att en SQL hade varit en databas som heter IPA:\var? Eller hade det varit en databas?
No, it would have been select IPA. No, hang on. No, select. No, there's no real equivalent in SQL. It's kind of like a variable in programming language.
Okay.
So IPA is the name of the node you will get back.
That you will refer to in the rest of this query.
Okay, so det är alltså någon betydning?
No, not in the database. No.
Yeah.
It's just an identifier for using in this. Yeah, exactly. So I could rename that to potato.
Yeah, sure.
The next one does have a meaning in the database. That's the label. So it says this node is of type beer. And this is like a predicate. It says I want to get all of the nodes of type beer that have a title which is equal to Lavigrai IPA. It doesn't mean that the node has to only have a property called title that equals Lavigrai IPA. It just means that the node has to have a property that is equal to Lavigrai IPA.
Kolon er aldri.
That is like this bit here is like a JSON object. The syntax is basically exactly the same.
Ja.
And you can have different matching regex inside there, so you can have the early
Getting to that.
stuff.
Hello? Next time it's PowerPoint. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, so to do more flexible stuff, you can add a where at the bottom. So if you want to do regex matching, or if you want to do more than one check on something, then you can use that. But the performance is worse because in this case, instead of matching, instead of matching all of the nodes of type beer with a title that equals Lavigrai IPA, you're matching all of the nodes that are type beer and then checking each of them if they have the title Lavigrai IPA or IPA.title. And I know that's a tenuous comparison that I just made, but there are some performance considerations under the hood that makes this much better than doing this, even if you take away the or.
Kan du gjøre liksom referere rundt I de spørringene? Sånn så hvis for eksempel IPA Bear har en humle, ser den har kaskade I seg. Og så vil jeg se om det finnes noen IPA Bears som har kaskade, som har humle med kaskade, men også som har kaskade I navnet sitt. Kunne jeg gjort det uttrykket?
Yes, you can. For sure. I'm assuming that hop in this case is another node, like another type of node, and it's related to. But yeah, you can, and we'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually have this database, and we'll get to a stage where I can just write queries to kind of give you an idea.
So you're keeping track of the beer stock in different shops?
Vinmonopoly has an open API, except the open API is a CSV. Someone wrote a library for that to put that into a sane data format. And then I am importing all of that data and then adding rate beer data to it and converting it to the Okay, converting it to into the graph database in my own format. Yes. Let's see. Yeah, so as you've already seen in some places, did it stop? Okay, it's back on. Sorry about that. Match can specify nodes and relationships and the directions between them. So for example, here it's matching, it's not setting any identifiers, so you couldn't refer to any of this stuff later, but it's matching breweries who brew beer and the country that those beers are brewed in. That's, hello? Oh, for fuck's sake. That's a relationship between two nodes. And those little arrows there are directionality, so you can put them on the other side if the direction of the relationship is going the other way. All relationships have a direction.
Do they all have names or?
Yes, they all have types. They all have exactly one type. You can't have more than one type in a relationship like you can on a node. And you can also specify a predicate on the relationship. So relationships can have properties. In practice, those properties on relationships are almost always quantities. I've misspelled quantity there. But if you for example, in a social network, you'll have two friends that are related to each other, or two people that are related to each other with a relationship friend, and then the friend relationship might have a since or something like that. But in practice, almost always those relationships, the properties on a relationship will be a quantity of some sort.
Og det en enveis Hvis du hadde hatt dette tilfellet, så ville det vært toveis, så du måtte hatt en karakter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because they're directional, you need a relationship in both directions.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot to put an arrow in here, but that kind of demonstrates that a good point here, which is that this will match that in underscore stock relationship going in either way. That is valid. It'll just match the relationship, and it doesn't matter which way the relationship is going. Okay, so where is similar to SQL, except it must okay, I guess it's similar to SQL in that way too. It must immediately follow a clause-like match which gives you a set of data, and then it reduces that selection even further. So in this case, we're getting all of the beers that have a style of India Pale Ale, and we're matching all the stores and the stock levels. Then we're reducing that data set by saying we want all the stores that begin with that match that regex there, so begin in Bergen, and all of the beers that have a rate beer weighted average of higher than 3.9, and then we're just returning all of the data, and that results in this. So we got 6 Vinmonopolet. We got the relationship of 2 beers, and we got the relationships between them and the stock level at all of those stores. Oops. Yeah. Okay, so what about creating stuff? You can do that with Cypher as well. Create will take a pattern and then put it into the graph. Regardless of what already exists in the graph, it doesn't check, it just creates everything that you specify. So for example, if you put this, use this query here, you will create a beer called I Made This Up by brewery Monadic Ale and create a relationship between them, and all of those 3 things, the 2 nodes in the relationship, will be created every time, resulting in this kind of thing. So for example, if there was already a brewery in the database called Monadic Ale, well, now there's 2. So there's the next creation statement. Merge is like saying match or create. So it will attempt to find the pattern, and if it can't find a pattern that matches the exact pattern that you specified, then it will create the entire pattern. So in this example again, if Monadic Ale this time, if Monadic Ale did exist in the database, but the beer didn't and the relationship didn't, then again you've got 2 Monadic Ale nodes and a relationship between the second one, the new one, and the beer that you created. So way to make sure that doesn't happen, because that's usually not what you want to happen. You can first do a match and then use the identifiers that you matched in the match. You can use them inside the merge to create data. So that might look like this. Match brewery called Monadic Ale, and then we merge using that identifier, and then create a relationship and a beer, Kati and Yalu. Now if that brewery already had a beer called Kati and Yalu, then it would do nothing. If it would just return. It would assign something to that beer identifier, but it would just it wouldn't actually create any new data. Yeah, I explained that on the last slide. Oops. Okay, so create unique is the 3rd creation statement. There's only 3, and this kind of does a combination of the last 2 things. It pretty much does what we saw in the last slide. So doing that same example again, create unique will match the parts of the pattern that it can and create the parts that it can't. So it will make the least changes to the graph to get that pattern in there. So for example, if that brewery already existed, then it would match the brewery and then create the beer relating to it. Or it will create everything or return everything if it already exists. Yes, I explained that. And it will just get angry at you if there's ambiguity. So if there's two breweries called Banana Ale because you screwed up and did a merge before, then it will throw an error because it doesn't know where you're trying to. It won't just create a million relationships to the same beer. It will say there's ambiguity in this. We can't do this. There's also other things which work as you would expect them to. So set, remove, delete. Delete doesn't delete the relationships to a node. So you need special syntax to specify that you want to first delete all of the relationships going in or into or coming out of a node, and then the node itself, and that's detach delete. Okay. Obviously. Yeah. So you can do stuff like this in SQL as well, like select distinct, but I think it's more flexible in Cypher. I'll give you some examples. Collect is kind of hard to get your head around when you. So one of the hardest things to get your head around in the Cypher is the concept of rows, I guess, and collections. I'm not even sure how I should explain it, but when you, for example, match a brewery, then you get all of those rows of breweries, and if you create a relationship from that, if you're matching a relationship to a beer from that brewery, then you're going to get rows with the same brewery on it. So if you have 15 beers in one brewery, you're going to get 15 rows, and 15 of the breweries are going to be the same on each of those rows. So you might want to do something like, this is that exact example, you might want to do something like collect those beers into an array on one row. You want only one row for each brewery, but you want to have every beer on that one row. And that's where collect comes in. You use that to collect each of those beers down into the single row. So that looks like this in the output after querying. So we have one brewery and we have an array of beers. If we didn't do that, we'd have an array with 2 rows where we've got a brewery and a beer on each row. So there's a few functional functions that you can use as well, like extract, which is just map, and reduce and filter, and you can use them in lots of other places as well. There's also stuff like ternary expressions and stuff like that. So the web console. Yep.
Det går dårlig med PowerPoint.
Yes.
Derfor.
So let's see. Does anyone have any suggestions of what I should query for? I have all of Vinmonopola.
Query all of Vinmonopola.
Find which Vinmonopoly has the best selection.
Has the most beers, for example? Okay.
That's only bästa.
The most beers or the most beers in stock?
Who has the most beers in stock with a rating over 4?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Huh?
Star.
Beer matcher det alla typer av öl, eller är det?
Yes, that's matching every beer.
Yeah.
What was the query again?
Who has the most in stock with a rating above 4?
Okay, so 4 is extremely high, so I'm going to go a little bit lower than that. That 3.9 I showed you before, that returned 2 of the beers that are top 50 in the world. So 3 is so rate beer is like is like that average is, it says weighted average, but it's really stupid because it is almost impossible on that scale to have anything below 3 and anything above 4. It's basically 3 to 4.
Hvor mange desimaler har du?
Hæ?
Har du masse desimaler i rommet mellom 3 og 4?
No, it's got a precision of 2.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so
100. There's 100 ratings.
Nettopp.
Yeah.
Det er jo innenfor det da.
2.8. Oh, that's difficult, huh? Interesting.
That's good.
Yeah.
Hva var det du skulle...
Noe som hadde flest innstock med rating og...
Vi skal sortere
Stor, deilig stor.
Gruppa I da, og så da på den gruppa.
Yes, ja.
Ja, eller I link. Eller I link.
Ok.
Ja, .net.
Ja,
I'm not doing anything on this screen. I'm not checking the README at all.
It's just meditating.
Men du har jo med Revolver å gjøre her da.
Det var enklere.
Folk vil jo gjøre det vanskelig for deg.
No, it's good.
No, but it wasn't unreasonable.
No, no.
Was it?
Nei.
I'm just wondering if there's a sum function that I can use. Oh yeah, there's a sum function. Sweet. Cool. Okay.
Hvis du ikke så hadde du reduce, hadde du ikke det da?
Yeah.
Ja, for den kan jo gjøre sum.
Nå må ikke være vanskelig.
Spørsmål?
I'm just what's the property? The amount property on stock? I can't remember. Count. Huh?
Actually, a top completion.
Nope. Okay, I'm gonna find out.
But can you inspect things?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, okay, that'll be easier. Okay. Quantity. Yes.
Is it spelled correctly? Or?
I think so.
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering where the mistake was last time.
Whoop. What did I do wrong?
Invalid syntax.
What?
Expected flow to run to turn follows.
Oh right, I see. That is that does the collect itself, I think. I should order by. Yeah, so that's done it, but there you go. Sandnes kvadrat.
No, I mean,
Huh?
you have to reverse your order.
Nei, det er
Nei, amount
det amount that I was
Oh yeah!
I viser
I
det.
like it. Ah,
Good
very
story.
story. My bad.
Why is no one buying the good beer in Sandnes?
That Neo4j doesn't have the answer to that question, unfortunately.
Oljebransjen er med. Nobody can afford it anymore.
Valentærlyst vinmonopol.
Trondheim.
Nummer 2.
Ja.
Sånn er det da kom bergensk
Har du
brygge
sitt eget bord?
Eget pol.
Sorter deg på hvor lang tid det tar å reise dit.
I could do that if I had location data.
I presume you have that in your bean monitor today.
Unfortunately, I don't.
Travel rights calculation would be good for this too, right?
Sorry?
Travel rights calculation would be nice.
Yes. People use it for that. People use Neo4j for that.
Ja. Men det er mål.
So, oh, what? Huh? Oh, right, I forgot the order. I'm trying to get a whole bunch of. Oh no, okay, it's only returning one row with one beer. Okay, so if I collect, no, screw that. Anyway, yeah, so this is like the thing that shows you your results. It can be quite useful and it's nice and pretty. I am just gonna. So you can use it to also expand and explore the data a little bit more. This is a very full database though, and sometimes it kind of explodes beyond proportion, but let's see. Okay. So now I've got all of the stuff that, all of the relationships outgoing from...
Hvorfor snurrer han?
huh?
Hvorfor snurrer han sånn på seg?
For fun.
Okay.
So I've got the fact that it's in stock at all of these different... This Hornbeer Caribbean Stout is in stock at all of these Vin Monopolos. It's an Imperial Stout. It's in the uavhengig category. It pairs with the dessert kake or something. So if this database was a little bit smaller, I could go ahead and click on these ones as well, and then I could get the rest of the Imperial Stouts, or you know, there might be just few enough that works. Huh? Yeah, Vin Monopol has a few Imperial Stouts, but the biggest part of this database is the stock information by far.
Well, what you're doing is like you could like have plan dinner and then just go there and say, okay, what do they have in Bergen that matches my dinner?
Exactly, and you can find all of the stuff that now my computer is very unhappy. Magnus?
Taking questions. Ja, skal vi se. En ting som jeg alltid synes er dritt, for eksempel en Real-database, det er å liksom gå inn og se hva er det her? Hva er nå her? For det er jo for eksempel ikke standardisert i SQL. Kan du gjøre noe i Neo4j for å liksom åpne en database og sånn? Hva er her?
Hva type er det vi har valgt ut av?
What, well, like the actual physical data under the hood, or do you mean just like what the data, what data is in the database?
Tables og altså vis databaser, vis felt.
Vis tabellen, vis... Ja. Så her, hvis jeg åpnet den databasen uten noen forventninger om hva som var igjen, hvordan kan jeg finne ut?
So in the web console you have this tab here, and it says these are the labels that exist, these are the relationships that exist, these are the properties that are on the nodes, there's information about what's in there.
So kanskje jeg vil klikke på beer.
There's 1,000 beers in the database. I'm not sure I want to find out. Let's go on food instead.
Well, no, test food.
There we go. It returns all the food.
Yeah.
Oh, with limit 25, so it's only returning 5. Yeah. Yeah. But then if you didn't do that, you can just go into the rows view and it'll give you. So that's much more. It's better. The rows view is better if you have a huge data set where it can't show you all the data. But then from that, I'm not going to. It's going to complain if I try and click on this. Isn't it? Huh?
Ja, hvis du bare ser på en haug med noder uten klanter mellom.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. This is all of the beers that pair with Grønsaker. Okay, sweet.
Ja, nydelig.
Wine as well?
I do not have wine. Because I couldn't get the extra beer. It's pulling data from rate beer as well. The value of this database is the fact that it's pulling metadata from RateBR.
Men gjør han gjør ikke det under spørringen din? Du har dratt det ned på forhånd, sant?
Yeah, I have a separate node thing that I wrote to scrape to read the Neo4j.
Ja, for du kan ikke kommunisere med flere datakilder og så kontinere.
That's not a part of Neo4j, no. Hmm. Yeah, cool. That's basically it. Any questions?
Jeg tror bare vi stikker jo nå, jeg.
So, one question. How big is this? If you want to have a small web service thingy, do you need a massive box just because it's JVM?
Yes. No. Kinda. We run our dev server for Brick. Brick runs on Neo4j. We run our dev server on a. Is it a small EC2?
It was when I was there.
Yeah, it hasn't changed.
Okay.
I think it's been down for 40% of the time since you haven't been there anyway. It runs on a small and a small EC2 instance, and every 6 months or so, it just dies. The database just dies. So that's okay. So our small dev server doesn't have any swap on it, so it hits the memory limit, and the OS kills Neo4j.
Does it keep everything in memory, or?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we have a long-running problem at Brick that we share lots of clients on servers, and that takes a shit ton of memory, and that causes problems. You can configure it to restrict the amount of stuff that it can keep in memory, but it works best when you have everything in memory.
Men du kan ikke bare gjøre internt I en graf at du segmenterer kunder uten at de...
No. Oh, you could, but you don't have any good. You don't have any good assurance that you won't leak between. All of your assurances need to be written by you, and that's not very trustworthy. So, but so I've thought of doing it this way, and in practice it means that every single one of your queries needs to add an extra label every time you specify a node to specify that it's in a certain segment. That's the only real way of doing it. Or say that a relationship eventually goes back to some root node which specifies a certain segment. One thing I didn't show is that relationships, you can have relationships, you can say that they're of n length, and so it can skip nodes along the way. So for friends, you can say, find, if I had people in this, I could say find beers that or people within 5 links of friends from me like. So you don't have to specify the length of the distance between the relationships. So that's kind of how the Facebook graph works.
But, on the other hand, I remember we went to this talk on Neo4j a few years ago, and they said you got some nice segmentation some other way in here, because if you just made sure that how you created the relations, then you would never accidentally access. Like if it's different departments and just everything is related to that department, you couldn't, one person here and one person there, you couldn't leak from one to the other without going through.
That is true.
I just remember them being very happy about it.
Yeah, I think that kind of changed a little bit with how Cypher has evolved and with them adding labels. That would mean that you couldn't do anything like this.
Yeah, this was before labels.
You couldn't do that because that would return everything from every segment. You'd have to, every single query would have to link back to a root node in some way. And so for us, in our search, that means we can't just go match videos where search term is in the name or whatever.
Yeah,
you have.
Don't have that,
So it adds an overhead to everything and an amount of complexity to everything, which is just annoying.
2 spørsmål. Webscale. Og et mer seriøst spørsmål. Kan du få en som refererer litt tilbake til spørsmålet til Stig? Er det noen som gjør Neo4j as a service?
Yes, that's a thing. Graphene DB is Neo4j as a service. I think.
Har du billigere prismodeller enn hvis du kjøper lisens?
Sure hope so. I haven't looked. It must say web scale here somewhere. But you can have 1,000 nodes and 10,000 relationships on a free database. Yeah, so that's how I would do it if I was doing my own thing.
Bla litt mer over for å se hva det koster hvis du har litt performance og sånn.
Du får din egen ide.
So for us at Brick, we have like 16 Neo4j databases in practice, and so this is totally unrealistic for us because this is per database. So we can't use something like this. But
Du
for
har 16 av deg på 50 i måneden.
This one? Yeah.
50 standard. Nei, 16 standard, kan du ikke?
yeah, that would be really fucking expensive.
Ja.
Men dere har kanskje bare liksom 1000 noder og 10 000?
Yeah, but then there's a wall there,
Yeah.
and we can't grow beyond it.
Ja, så hvis du hadde hatt den muren på en eller annen form på for eksempel spørringen eller noe sånt, hvis jeg hadde gitt deg mur som et argument på spørringen, så hadde du plutselig kunnet spart alle penger.
Then it would, yeah, exactly. It would be much easier to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Har du spørringer som bruker grafalgoritmer? Som kan du gjøre flow-dasher, kan du gjøre min-cut, max-flow?
I've never had to, and I don't know, but I'm sure it's possible. That's what stuff like this is for. I'm not really sure, but there are definitely Stack Overflow questions and answers on that. As far as I know, the shortest path and Dijkstra are the most common, and because of that, they're built into Cypher. But other stuff.
Tror du fløyvarselsykler, hva?
Krever en dag?
Jeg tror fløyvarsel krever dag.
What was the algorithm called?
Fløyvarsel. Ja, men jeg tror han krever en dag.
So what does it do? What is that?
Shortest path.
Or is it weighted or
Ja, korteste vei mellom alle parter i vektergrafen.
I have no idea.
Men sykliske?
Ja, eller asykliske.
Ja, det er det jeg lurer på.
Det er en fløyvarsel
600.
Ingen negative sykler.
Sånn er det, ja.
Hvis jeg kan snurre rundt, så får du endelig negativ.
Veien blir kortere jo mer du går rundt.
Kjenner du det?
Jeg har blitt mange ganger på den.
Skal vi klappe for deg da?
Ja.
Thanks.
Et spørsmål til. Kan du bruke litt sånn som Magnus bruker couch, altså rett fra en kundeeksponert webside? Altså ingen mellomvare, bare websider, kundeeksponert, JavaScript, Neo4j.
Så du tenker servere statiske sider med
You mean like okay, so it can't serve HTTP, like it can't serve like a web template like Couch can, but you can access it from the client side. It would be insecure as hell.
Yeah.
People could just open up the console and put stuff in your database.
Altså det ingen sikkerhetsmekanismer?
No.
Nei.
I mean, there's basic authentication. That's not going to do you any good.
Men du har ingen rettigheter som for eksempel kunne gi deg match, men ikke insert, eller?
No. No, that's not in there. Yeah, we use it in a VPC that has one open port inside and a Docker instance inside that. So we have no security in our databases. Our security is that you cannot access it.
I've never missed any security measures.
Sorry?
I've never missed any security
No.
measures. I've always been happy to not configure.
No, they added.
Noen ting som helt forferdelig med liksom PS-skall. Nei, du har ikke rett det.
They added user authentication recently, and the first thing I did with that is turn it off, and then get angry at all the pull requests to my library. Not pull requests, bug reports. Yes. Not hey, I added this. Hey, add this.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Sweet.
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 Tweet.